Saudi Arabia is building a city with no cars, no roads, and no carbon emissions. And it will cost $500 billion, most of which does not exist yet. You are not paying for it. But the 35 million Saudi citizens who had no vote on this decision are. Their pension funds, their oil revenues, their children's inheritance, all redirected into 170 kilometers of mirrored glass in the middle of a desert. In the next 12 minutes, I will show you exactly how this was engineered and who gets rich because of it. To understand NEOM, you need to understand one number. In 2016, Saudi Arabia's government calculated it had roughly 15 years of financial runway at current oil prices before the kingdom faced a structural funding crisis. Oil accounts for roughly 70% of government revenue. The population was growing. The public sector payroll was swelling, and the world was slowly, but visibly, turning toward electric vehicles and renewable energy. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman launched Vision 2030 as the answer: diversify the economy, build tourism, attract foreign investment, create private sector jobs for a generation of young Saudis who had never needed to work because the state paid for everything. NEOM was the centerpiece, a $500 billion smart city on the Red Sea coast. The Line, its flagship project, would house 9 million people in 2 parallel mirrored skyscrapers, 500 meters tall and 170 kilometers long. No cars, no streets, everything delivered by autonomous systems underground. The project was announced to the world in 2017, and construction began in 2020. Think of it like a family that takes out a second mortgage on their home to build a boutique hotel in the backyard, betting that tourists will come, the hotel will pay itself off, and everything will be fine. Except this family has 35 million members who were never asked, and the mortgage is being drawn from their collective savings. But here's what they never show you in the promotional videos. The financial model behind NEOM has never been independently verified. The projected returns, the projected population, the projected foreign investment, all of it comes from one source. And that source has every reason to make the numbers look good. Here is the first revelation. The Line's engineering is not the fantasy. The engineering is real. Hyperloop-style transport, AI-managed climate systems, vertical agriculture, renewable microgrids. Engineers from AECOM, Bechtel, and dozens of global firms are genuinely building this. The fantasy is the financial assumption that 9 million people will choose to live inside 2 mirrored walls in a country that currently has no democracy, limited civil freedoms, and summer temperatures reaching 50 degrees Celsius. It works like a speculative real estate development, but at national scale. A developer builds first, then sells. If buyers come, the debt is covered and the profit is captured. If buyers don't come, the debt remains, but the developer has already been paid. In NEOM's case, the Saudi state is both the developer and the buyer of last resort. If the city fails to attract residents and investors, there is no private developer to absorb the loss. The Saudi people absorb it. And this is where it gets dark. The second revelation: the land was not empty. The Huwaita tribe had lived in the Tabuk region for generations. When NEOM's construction boundaries were drawn, their villages fell inside the perimeter. In 2020, Saudi security forces forcibly displaced the tribe. Abdul Rahim al-Huwaiti, a tribal leader who publicly refused to leave and posted videos of his resistance online, was shot and killed by security forces. 3 other tribe members were sentenced to death. Sentences later reportedly commuted under international pressure. This is not a footnote. It is the foundation. The moment the project revealed its actual cost accounting. The human cost was not included in any financial projection. The number I am about to show you will make you angry. The third revelation: NEOM's original 2017 plan projected 9 million residents and full completion by 2030. By 2024, internal documents leaked to the Wall Street Journal revealed the revised internal target: 300,000 residents by 2030. Not 9 million, 300,000. That is a 97% reduction in the projected population in 7 years before a single permanent resident has moved in. A city designed around 9 million people, running climate systems, transport networks, and infrastructure for 9 million people, occupied by 300,000, runs at roughly 3% of designed capacity. The fixed costs do not shrink with the population, they stay, and someone pays them. Follow the money. The Public Investment Fund, Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, is the primary financier of NEOM. The PIF is chaired by Mohammed bin Salman himself. This means the person who conceived the project, approved the project, and controls the media narrative around the project is also the person controlling the fund paying for it. Saudi Aramco, the state oil company, was partially privatized in 2019, specifically to fund the PIF. The IPO raised $25.6 billion. Aramco then began paying the PIF an extraordinary dividend, over $75 billion in 2023 alone, directly transferred from the profits of the national oil company into the investment fund bankrolling NEOM and other Vision 2030 megaprojects. Meanwhile, over 100 international consulting firms, McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, Oliver Wyman, have earned billions in fees advising on Vision 2030 projects. These firms have a documented commercial interest in projecting optimism. A consultant who tells a client their $500 billion project is financially unviable does not get rehired. Saudi citizens cannot publicly question the financial viability of NEOM. Criticism of Vision 2030 on social media has led to documented arrests. The information environment is controlled in a way that no independent financial audit has ever been publicly released. The most disturbing part? This was all completely legal. And it still is. Here is the fact that reframes everything. NEOM is not primarily designed for Saudi citizens. It is designed for foreign capital and foreign residents. The target demographic, as stated in NEOM's own investor materials, is international tech workers, global investors, and high net worth individuals seeking a new model of civilization. Saudi nationals are expected to make up a minority of the permanent population. This means Saudi Arabia's national wealth, drawn from oil revenues built over 80 years, is being used to build a luxury city that its own people may not be able to afford to live in. The financing is Saudi. The beneficiaries are global. The twist goes further. Saudi Arabia's non-oil fiscal deficit, the gap between what the government spends and what it earns outside of oil, was $78 billion in 2023. The IMF projects that Saudi Arabia needs oil at roughly $80 per barrel to break even on its current budget. Oil has traded below that threshold for significant stretches since 2014. Every year, NEOM underperforms its financial projections, widens that gap. Now the real cost to Saudi citizens. The PIF manages approximately $700 billion in assets, built from decades of oil revenue that belongs in sovereign terms to the Saudi people. NEOM alone is projected to consume $500 billion over its build-out period. That is 71% of the entire fund committed to one project in one location, dependent on one set of population and investment assumptions that have already been revised downward by 97%. If NEOM reaches only 10% of its original financial targets, a scenario that independent analysts consider plausible given current trajectory, the loss to Saudi national wealth would exceed $400 billion. That is roughly $11,400 per Saudi citizen, money that could have funded universal health care, education infrastructure, or a genuine economic diversification fund for the post-oil transition. The desert is full of unfinished megaprojects from governments that bet everything on a vision one man had. This is not the first. The question is whether it will be the last. Here is the one thing this knowledge gives you. If you have any exposure to Gulf sovereign wealth funds through index funds, emerging market ETFs, or infrastructure investment vehicles, check whether NEOM-linked assets are included. Several institutional funds have taken positions in Vision 2030 supply chain companies. The risk profile of those positions depends entirely on assumptions that have already been revised downward once. Knowing that is not a reason to panic, it is a reason to look. The broader lesson is simpler. When a government announces a project too large to fail, too visionary to question, and too politically sensitive to audit, that is not a sign of ambition. That is the architecture of unaccountable spending, and the people who fund it rarely get to vote on it. Here's the debate worth having. Should sovereign wealth funds, built from a nation's natural resources, require a public referendum before committing to megaprojects above a certain threshold? Or is centralized decision-making the only way to move fast enough to compete globally? Both arguments are serious. Leave yours below. Next week, we are looking at something you use every single day, a system so quietly engineered to extract money from you that most people defend it without realizing what it costs them. Stay close.